French President Emmanuel Macron won re-election on Sunday, defeating his far-right opponent Marine Le Pen by a comfortable margin, heading off what would have been a political earthquake. In a speech below the Eiffel Tower, Macron acknowledged those on the political left who voted for him reluctantly, only in order to prevent the far-right candidate from winning.
Many of our compatriots voted for me not out of support for my ideas, but to block those of the extreme right. I want to thank them, and I know that I have a duty towards them in the years to come.
Macron supporters cheered and waved French and EU flags as the results rolled in. On the outskirts of Paris, dejected Le Pen supporters booed the election outcome. Farther north, Le Pen fans expressed unbridled anger as they view Macron as an elitist with contempt for ordinary people. Le Pen conceded the race not long after the polls closed, but vowed to keep up the fight with the June parliamentary elections in mind.
The French are showing tonight a wish for a strong counterpower against Emmanuel Macron. The match is not completely over, since in a few weeks the legislative elections will take place.
Opposition parties on the right and left will immediately start a major push to try to vote in a parliament and government opposed to Macron, whose margin of victory looked to be tighter than when he first beat Le Pen 5 years ago, underlining how many French remain unimpressed with him and his domestic record. In what may be a sign of things to come, police fired tear gas at demonstrators Sunday night. Protests over Macron's pro-business reforms plagued his first 5 years in office. Despite the social discontent, though, the 44-year-old became the first French president in 20 years to win a second term. EU allies were pleased, hailing the centrist candidate's victory as a reprieve, following 2020's Brexit, the 2016 election of Donald Trump, and the rise of a new generation of nationalist leaders.
Comment ça va? Ah oui. Il y a pas de... S'il vous plaît. Comment allez-vous? Vous allez bien? Ça va? Très bien. Ah, cordon bleu et mousse au chocolat.
The French voted on Sunday in an election that will decide whether pro-European Union centrist President Emmanuel Macron keeps his job or is unseated by far-right Eurosceptic Marine Le Pen. That would amount to a political earthquake, on a par with Brexit or the US election of Donald Trump, ending decades of rule by mainstream French leaders and raising questions about the future of the European Union. Opinion polls in recent days gave Macron a solid and slightly growing lead, but a surprise Le Pen victory couldn't be ruled out. Low turnout looked highly likely. Macron has warned of civil war if Le Pen, whose policies include a ban on wearing Muslim headscarves in public, is elected, and has called on Democrats of all stripes to back him. He won against Le Pen in the last presidential election 5 years ago. This was voter Lionel Fernandez in the alpine town of Annecy.
I usually vote for the left, but it's to block. I'm not okay with Ms. Le Pen's policies, so it's out of the question. We need to unite.
Le Pen has zeroed in on Macron's abrasive leadership style, which she says shows an elitist contempt for ordinary people. And she focused her campaign on the rising cost of living, which many French say has worsened with the surge in global energy prices. That worked for Virginie Gris in Hénin-Beaumont, northern France. I'm not saying we'd become richer under Le Pen, she says, but life would be fairer. Everyone would harvest the fruits of their labour, and that's not the case with Macron. If Macron wins a second term, it won't be plain sailing. With the furious protests over his pro-business reforms that have plagued his presidency almost certain to continue.
Cristo è risorto veramente.
Christ is risen. He is truly risen. May he fill the good expectations of hearts with hope. May he honor the peace offended by the barbarity of war. Today marks 2 months since the start of this war. Instead of stopping, the war has become harsher. It is sad that in these days, which are the holiest and most solemn for all Christians, the deadly sound of weapons is heard more than the sound of bells that announce the resurrection. And it is sad that weapons are increasingly taking the place of words. I renew an appeal for an Easter truce, the minimum and tangible sign of a willingness for peace. Stop the attacks in order to help the exhausted population. Stop in obedience to the words of the risen Lord who, on Easter Day, repeats to his disciples, "Peace be with you." I ask everyone to pray more for peace and to have the courage to say and demonstrate that peace is possible. Please, political leaders, listen to the voice of the people who want peace, not an escalation of the conflict.
Non un'escalation del conflitto.
Twitter has kicked off negotiations with Elon Musk over the Tesla CEO's $43 billion offer to acquire the social networking site. That's according to sources familiar with the matter, who say the negotiations signal that Twitter is now considering the possibility of selling the company to Musk on more attractive terms. Twitter had previously adopted a so-called poison pill to defend against the billionaire's effort to buy the company. Musk threatened to launch a tender offer in response to get support for his bid from Twitter shareholders. Sources say Twitter's board grew concerned that many shareholders could back Musk unless it sought to negotiate a deal. Musk has insisted that Twitter needs to be taken private in order to grow and become a genuine platform for free speech, and has been meeting with shareholders over the past few days. He says his current Twitter bid is his best and final offer, something which sources say has emerged as a hurdle in the deal negotiations. Representatives for Twitter and Musk did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Sources have added that the negotiations don't guarantee Twitter will accept Musk's bid of $54.20 per share. They also say shareholders' price expectations for the deal have diverged based on their differing investment strategies. Short-term-minded investors, including hedge funds, want Twitter to take Musk's offer, and sources say some are fretting about a recent plunge in the value of tech stocks. Whereas active long-term investors, who along with index funds hold the biggest chunk of shares, want a higher price. Saudi Arabia's Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, a Twitter shareholder, tweeted earlier in April that, quote, "I don't believe that the proposed offer by Elon Musk comes close to the intrinsic value of Twitter given its growth prospects."